As a bibliophile, she incorporates all within her love of art, interdisciplinary digital humanities, and virtual reality content development. Her sacred burial ground preservation work honors her ancestors whose shoulders she stands to fortify her own stance during this particular life journey. Welcome, Dr. Ramona LaRoche.
Erin, I'm getting some feedback also. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Erin, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for coming. This is a very special event. We're here today to talk about how all over the world people honor their ancestors. Um, Most recently, here in Fort Lauderdale, we had a wonderful exhibit. It's going to be ending this week at the historic Fort Lauderdale Museum downtown, and it was the honoring the Day of the Dead, Dias de los Muertos, and it's a wonderful exhibit, and they will end that tomorrow with a procession in that area down by the river here in Fort Lauderdale. And what I realized is, and looking at that exhibit, but I also started thinking about just how in many cultures, not just in Mexico, but in many cultures, people honor their ancestors. And whether it's Memorial Day in May here in the United States, where we honor, people like veterans and, other ancestors, or whether it's in the sacred burial ground in South Carolina, where we do Gullah Geechee tradition, which is my ancestral roots, or whether we look at Native American cultures, and I can go on and on and on. But today I invited several of my colleagues, um, near and afar, to kind of talk about this a little bit. So I want to begin, I think I'd like to begin, first of all, with my dear friend who I met 3 years ago when I first came to Fort Lauderdale, and her name is Tara Chadwick. Tara, what can I say? She's a wonderful sister who's been doing a lot of wonderful curatorial work down at historic Fort Lauderdale. She's an artist. Her sister's an artist, and they're amazing family. So I'm going to let Tara talk a little bit about herself, her work, and what she does, and just kind of start us off this evening with our discussion. Tara, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
on,
Oh,
there I am. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this beautiful time that we're going to spend here together this evening. Before we go any further, I just want to give you a little tiny look of where I am, and that is on the banks of the New River in front of this beautiful museum called History Fort Lauderdale. It's a Tara camp, so the pivot, the tripod in this case is my knee. And so I just wanted you to be able to see this beautiful river that flows out. The way that you're looking at it is it's flowing out to the sea. And then pivot again on my other knee. You can see the other side of the river. And this is the New River. And so where I'm sitting here on the banks of the New River, put my Tara cam back down again. This area has been a place of human occupation for many, 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 many thousands of years. And so the evidence of that is in the archaeological record and in the zoning that's here in the city of Fort Lauderdale. Along this river, along this part of the New River, on 50 feet on either side of the river, it's considered an archaeologically sensitive zone. What that means is that anywhere that you put anything into the ground, you're most likely going to be disturbing the artifacts that were left here by people who lived here before us. And so in recognition of that and in celebration of today, the first day of Native American Heritage Month, I just would like to honor this part of the land and the people who have taken care of it in such a way that this river still flows and this earth still supports human life today. And so if you would all just take a moment, close your eyes, whatever, zone out just for a moment. I'm not sure if you can hear the beautiful sounds of the water that's lapping here beside me, but I just want to say, Bojo, Nindaway Maganidok, Bosh King Wabagwan, Indigenous Cost, Wabgani Sun Goddam, Bangini, we got get Nimi Miguitu with Haguzian, Asia Maya Yanungum, Gaini Miguitu with Haguzian, Asia Puch Tumen, Doj Chigewaji, O Anoki, Nungum Minawa Inda, Sogijik, Gai, Nimi Miguitu with Haguzian, Asia Juanya Aguna, Juinge, Midewabo, Gaini Miguitu with Haguzian, Asia Ge, we the Magenan, ya oh, Ge Tenishna Bedok, Minawa, ya oh, Niganing. So I just wanted to take those few moments to, in the way that was taught to me by the Anishinaabe people whose land on which I was born, to say thank you to the people who have been taking care of and do take care of this land here where we live now in South Florida. And so so my name is Cara Tadwick. My other name is Bosh King Wabagwan. And so in that way, I would like to say thank you also to the one who named me, who passed away last year. This is going to be the first time that that I'm thinking about him now as an ancestor rather than as an elder, as a relative. And so, you know, this Dia de los Muertos that we're celebrating today and tomorrow, you know, it's a tradition that that we've learned from the indigenous people of Mexico, but it's a practice. The concept of keeping alive the memories of those who we love is a practice, I think, that spans all of humanity. And in fact, one could argue is partly what makes us have humanity, what makes us human, is that love that we share and that bond that continues to exist into the before life and into the after life. And so, you know, we think about our children before they're born or before we decide to have them, just as we think about those who we've lost as well. So it's a circle, it's a circular concept of the continuity of life as we know it. Just like this river that I'm sitting by, you know, they say that the water, you know, the water came at the very beginning of time and will continue to flow that way. And so, so Dia de los Muertos, as we know it, you know, as we practice it today, you know, there was recently a bunch of flowers, very dried out flowers that was found at the base of one of the pyramids at Teotihuacan. And so, you know, we know that those marigolds were placed there as an offering. So there's a boat going by. I don't know how loud it's going to be for a moment, making lots of waves. I might have to move my Tara cam. But anyways, I will stop speaking for now and say thank you for listening to me and my long, winding introduction. And I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic. And I think maybe Lewis might want to introduce himself now as well. Thank you, and I look forward to chatting with you guys some more.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tara. Tara, when I asked you for your intro, you said you would introduce yourself, but I went ahead and kind of looked up being the science, library science person I am, and I kind of looked at Mr. Alamayu's background, and it was pretty impressive, I must say. So thank you so much. So if you don't mind, I'd like to share a little bit of what I found in my research on him, and then of course he can add to it because I know there's plenty more to add. Um, so Mr. Luis Alamejo was born in Chicago to parents of African, American Indian, and European descent. He teaches environmental sustainability at the Higher Education Consortium for Urban Affairs in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He's been a community organizer with Environmental Justice Advocates of Minnesota. As a writer, he uses poetry and storytelling to unite communities over environmental concerns. He's a founding member of the award-winning poetry jazz ensemble Ancestral Energy and a co-founder with Juanita Espinoza of the Native Art Circle. He's also a Buddhist. How we take time to honor the loved ones we have lost in different ways throughout human history and geography is one of the things that he's focused on in his work. He was instrumental in working with a group of young people over a 3-year period, including an annual week-long effort at providing youth with time and instruction in art making, which honored one person they wished to remember. Lewis is also an internationally recognized artist, a mentor, and an advocate for the rights of nature and humans. Thank you so much for joining us, Lewis, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Um, well, thank you for the invitation to be here. And it's such a pleasure to see and hear Tara again. I, I have some negative feelings about Florida having won her away from us. Um, wow, it's hard to know where to start, but my understanding of ancestors was a real struggle to grasp. And I think it's because the history of my family was full of such trauma uh, that they didn't like to talk about some of the stories because it brought up painful stuff. But as I reflect upon the love that my parents, my grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, the love that we shared amongst one another, to me, just strikes me as such a miracle and such a blessing. Uh, I think the ancestors have been talking to me since I could speak, actually. Um, as a really young kid, as a preschooler, things would come out of my mouth that I shouldn't have known. And it would cause sometimes a room to grow really silent, or my mother to become very agitated and like snatch me and take me someplace away from people. And I began to learn how to be quiet because I never knew what was going to come out of my mouth. But a lot later, I began to realize that these thoughts that came to me were actually voices of my ancestors who opened the door for me to come into this world at this time with a purpose and a mission. And I think my maternal grandmother was the one who specifically wanted me to be here in this body in order to address some of the things that wounded her and made her be less powerful than she was allowed to be because she was a black woman in a white world that was also patriarchal. She was an artist. She was a concert uh, pianist and also a community organizer. And she started an organization when my mother was young called, I think it was called Little Women, but actually they were teaching young African American girls that they were intelligent, they were powerful, they had something to give. And, back in the 30s, my mother was amongst a group of African American girls who integrated Girl Scout camp for the first time. And about 40 years later, my brother did the same thing in Boy Scout camp. So at this stage of my life, I realized that as an elder, in some sense, a multicultural spiritual elder, that I'm here to support younger artists and activists in creating a new world, a new environment that holds multiple cultures and also encourages people to remember that their ancestors are right by them, just as the Creator is right by them and within them, and that we have work to do that's about healing the world, healing ourselves, and making a new way for people to go. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you so much. So, I was trying to give it a little more time because one of our speakers, I was really looking forward to hearing, she hasn't joined us, so we'll keep it in prayer that she will. So, meanwhile, I'm going to move on to talk a little bit about my background. As you know, I'm here at the African American Research Library, and I've been here for the last 3 years. I actually came here from coastal South Carolina. I live in a small place called Merrill's Inlet, and Merrill's Inlet is south of Myrtle Beach and north of Georgetown. And if you go 60 more miles south, you're in Charleston, South Carolina. So that kind of gives you an idea. Georgetown County is surrounded by 5 rivers and the Atlantic Ocean and lots of marshland, not swampland, marshland. So it's a wonderful place for fishing and seafood. And our oysters are the best. They have a different kind of salty taste, and I have not been able to find any like that here. Even the fish is not quite the same. Here we've got all these large bonefish. Back there we have smaller fish like spots and croakers and brim and those kind of fish. So I missed it. But I wanted to tell you that I am a 6th generation Gullah Geechee woman. And I grew up, though I was born in New York City, I grew up spending every summer from probably when I was 4 years old. Oh, here's Ingrid. Hold on a second. I'm going to pull her in. Oh, I just lost her. She'll come back. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Um, I spent every summer in Georgetown, South Carolina with my maternal grandmother. So I always consider myself to be a bicultural woman, traveling between, the city of New York and then South Carolina. Um, I was struck and aware that I was always the one that was curious about what had happened historically in my family. And one of the things that I noted when Louis was speaking, he talked about 2 things, which I noted. He talked about the history of trauma in our families, and he talked about his ancestors speaking to him. And also, he talked about grandmother, the power of grandmas. And um, there was trauma in our family, and the trauma was that my grandfather had actually been murdered in 1937, and no one wanted to talk about it. The story was that it was a hunting accident. Okay, I'm going to stop a minute and get Ingrid in here. Hi, Ingrid. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How's everyone
Good,
doing?
good. We're good. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Ingrid, I was just talking a little bit about my Gullah Geechee background. Um, so the story had it that my grandfather had been killed in a hunting accident, but actually it was not true. But because of the trauma and the pain, the family did not want to discuss it. So it took years before I became old enough to start doing my own genealogy research for me to find those newspaper articles of when it happened, and to just kind of move forward. And even in my own dissertation research, I looked at artisans, particularly carpenters, blacksmiths, potters, and masons that were from Carolina and that may have had connections to Barbados. My grandfather was a master carpenter, and he went in various places throughout the South and built homes. The home that I moved back to when I moved in, my ancestral home, was the home that my grandfather had actually built. So healing from that trauma and talking about those stories and being able to bring that story into my own dissertation became really important for me, because it's through these archives that we can connect with our memories, both our personal memories as well as our collective memories. And this is all a part of our healing process, I believe. And without us looking at some of those painful things, even though sometimes our ancestors do not want to talk about it because it was painful for them, it becomes important, I think, that we address it and look at it on some levels to see how we might be able to reconstruct, if you will. Excuse me, Erin, I'm getting a little feedback. I'm not sure why. So I'm going to stop for a moment because I do want to introduce Amelia Ingrid Lara. Is that right? Is that how I say your last name?
Yes.
Ingrid? Okay. So, Ingrid, we've all introduced ourselves, but I'd like you to talk a little bit about kind of like the universal theme of how we honor our ancestors around the world. But before you begin, I'm going to share a little bit about Ingrid. Um, Ingrid is what is known as a Mambo in Haiti, and she was born and raised in La Cour de Réal, Limonade, Haiti, a Vodun community. She has been teaching the Vodun traditions for more than 20 years to young African descendants and others in the United States and Haiti. She is a leader of the Maroon Society of the Taínos Descent in Derrière Lemonade, Haiti. I bring you Amelia. Thank you, Amelia, for joining us. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sure.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm always honored and proud to talk about my culture, to talk about my background, and also the reality and all the bad press that we had in the Vodou culture. Every time that I have an opportunity to talk about it, so I do so. So I thank you for having me.
Sure. You're welcome.
Um, I guess I'm just gonna get straight to it. Uh,
Yes.
we're gonna
Thank
talk
you.
about how we honor our dead, how we honor our ancestors. In the Vodou traditions, we we do not believe in death because we transit to another dimension and we go to our ancestors. Now, being in the body that we are right now, it's very, as you were talking about, it's very painful to accept um, our ancestors, um, our loved one leaving us.
Hmm.
But there's different ways of accepting it when we are in this body. In the Vodou tradition, when someone transit, we call that jambe. Um, we know that we stay and we came from water. We use the four elements. First, let me say it that way. We know that we only here for a number period of time. That's it. Some people live for a few years. Some are from uh, um,
Getting
a
feedback. Yeah.
lifetime, over 100 years, but some just enter and exit. And sometimes, as you say, it's very painful to accept. But we know we are the four elements. We know that we are God within God. Um, this tradition is not necessarily mean that we are a religion, but we are, this is our way of life. This is how we live our life. This is how we present. This is how we commute every day, every second in our life. So we know that dying also is a part of us. So we have the tradition of Gede. And what is Gede? Gede is the philosophy of life in general and society. Why are we making such taboo about certain things in life? Why society is telling us something, and then when we living the reality, it's totally different. So the philosophy of Gede, and the Gede people is from Dahomey. The history is from Dahomey, which is West Africa, and the Gede were migrated in Haiti, and as they were sold as slaves, their philosophy and they all over the island, and that's why that it's the tradition stay very strong, and the philosophy is like um, there's a thin line between life and death. We was born in one and only one sexual act. Some people are very religious and think about us other things, and this is their belief, and I respect that. And but in Voodoo, we know and we say this is nature. It's natural. We come from only in one act, which is like the circle of life. Now, when I say circle of life, you see, there's it's just like as I say, the circle, and inside of that circle you find the crossroad, you find the cross, but not the Christian cross, a cross with the same length. And life start in the bottom. I don't have anything to present it to you, I'm sorry, but in that line you find life and you find death, and there's only one thin line, and we don't want to accept it. And sometimes we forgot that we only here temporarily to do what we're supposed to do in this passage, in this dimension, and that we are very distracted of what society has to say and to offer. So when the Gede comes, when we honor our dead with the Gede, you can see that they sometimes they paint their face a part black, a part white, which is like we live with the ancestors. The ancestors, then they never really died because they are inside of us. Because it's my mother when she was alive, she had me, and so all of my ancestors before her. So they didn't really go or they are dead. We respect that. We know that they are living inside of us. We respect them, and that's why by honoring them, we honoring ourselves. By honoring everything that we have found in this earth, it's a part of our ancestor has paved the way for us to find this world right now, and we are doing our part to live for our children to come. And that's the way it is in this dimension. So the Gede, when they come, they would really make fun um, of society. They will paint one side of their face white, the other side black, or they could have glasses. They think one is white and the other one is very dark, or they take the lens off in one of them, they put it upside down, and then they would do what we call in English the dance, very sexual dance, and which is like the round. They're making the circle with the hips. And when we dancing, when the Gede is dancing like that, is to tell you every one of us came from a sexual act, and doesn't matter what you believe before you creation, the way you believe it, but we want to tell you this is what it is. It's positive, it's negative, and you have to make balance about everything. Who are you to say what is good and what is bad? Sometimes what we think that is really bad may be done for a reason that is behind our comprehension, that we don't know why those things are happening. The philosophy of Gede is telling you, and has been laughing and talking, and also it's very fun. Like today, after I'm done here, I'm gonna go to a party. We celebrate, we dance, we laugh, we celebrate with music. We say it's the day where you have. Oh, sorry. It's I'm sorry. It's the day where you allowed to say everything, you all the curse word that there is. This is the day that you can say it with no problem. And you talk about, the sexual part of a woman or a man, the sexual act, and you make fun about it. You whatever you free. This is a day that you free of saying and celebrating our ancestors. Today, what I did this morning, I can present to you. Behind me is my altar for my ancestors. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to turn off my phone, so I'm doing this on my phone. Somebody keep on calling me. Um, the way I present, for example, my mother, I know I made her best food today, what she loved the best. My father, and for everyone before them, we have like baked yams, baked plantains, we have fish, dry fish, and we present it with a lot of hot pepper. Hot pepper, what we call the Jamaican pepper, bonnet pepper, very hot. And when somebody has the spirit of Gede, and I present that if somebody has the spirit, they will come and take the hot pepper, and then we also make the drink, what we call bouteille piment, with the hot bonnet pepper, with rum, and they will wash, sorry to say, they private part, men or women, 'cause now you can understand how hard that is. And that person is able to control whatever, uh, it's not even a pen, they can control the sensation through that. That's how connected we are with our ancestors. In Haiti, the situation and how we live, and we do the same thing here, except the way we bury our dead is not, it's totally different here. In Haiti, someone may be poor and don't have money to build themselves a house, but they will make sure they got together to build a tomb, very nice one, with waiting, with area where the family can get together to talk to the dead. So that's how important our ancestors are to us, because they paved the way. Like today is the day we honor, by tomorrow, or tomorrow All Saint Day, but we do not have that, but we take both day, we celebrate it. Christianity is one thing, it's the religion, but in Vodou, the Haitian way, whether you any type of religion, but you know that November 1st belongs to the dead, whether you accept it or not, whether you want to call yourself um, someone that belongs to voodoo or not. You know how it is. Some people just don't think, they think voodoo is evil. They don't know exactly what it is. And it's through time and education that they will understand. Maybe we can try to undo the damage that was done in the voodoo culture for our children, especially um, African descent and everyone else, because in voodoo there's no race. We are one human race. So my dad, my ancestor, and your ancestors, if we go back and find out exactly where we come from, we're gonna realize that we are one human race. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. And that's what Gede is here to make fun of us. How we really divide ourselves for no reason, when we could have lived in peace and harmony in this planet. And that's why we honor and honor our dead. We really respect what we do. Like today, you'll find so many people in the cemetery with coffee, with food serving in everywhere. In Miami, we do the same thing, except we cannot go to the cemetery. You know how it is. They'll call the police on us. So it's to tell you that's how we celebrate our dead. That's how we present it to our children. That's how society, our community, not society, our community celebrate. Because we know we only here temporarily. We know that we're gonna go one day to join them. So let's do what we're supposed to do right here, right now, not wasting time on a lot of nonsense that really keep us apart, not to become one in society and do the job that we were put in this earth to do. Um, I just want you to ask a question. I'm at home and my door is somebody's knocking at my door. Can I have 2 seconds, please?
Sure, sure,
Thank you.
sure
Thank
you can, of course. Okay, okay. Wow. So,
We can
oh,
admire your beautiful altar while you're gone.
true, true. So, I'd like us to think about some of the things that Ingrid shared, and if you could
Yeah,
see or feel any commonalities. So think about that, and then when she comes back, we can talk a little bit about that.
yeah.
So Ingrid, I asked us to think about some of the commonalities or things that we could connect with in what you just shared with us. So I think Lewis is ready to answer.
Yeah, as I was listening, my head was just going like this.
Uh-huh.
I don't practice the voodoo tradition, but every just about everything you said, I agree with. And I've come to this place in my life where I think about spirituality and science being the same thing. And I know that our most ancient ancestors' spirituality and science was one thing. And 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 you also made me think about the fact when my mother died, there were a few days when I was like really deeply mourning, but at some point it just stopped because I could hear her telling me that she was still here and that we had a lot of work to do. So there is only life. There's this material life, and then there's all this energetic, mostly invisible life.
Thank you,
And
Lewis.
if we don't pay attention and honor our ancestors, it's like tying a hand behind our back. We weaken ourselves. We need to be in communion with them every day, every day.
Every day, I agree with you 100% because what we all, um, it's energy. They didn't really die. They didn't go. They just transit the time that we are now. Now they can define our time, and they are not dead. They are here. You can communicate with them, and they are a part of our life in a different dimension that we don't understand yet. Because voodoo is science. It's knowledge. It's everything that you need to know. So for that reason, it plays a role in society right now, in our world, to teach everyone. Listen, it is important to remember what they have done for us. They paved the road for us. That's the reason why
Mhm.
we find, I mean, the phone that I'm talking to you now, I'm sure whomever invented it is no longer here. I'm still using it. That person is alive.
Mhm.
Myself, my mom passed away, but I'm alive. She is alive inside of me. How can I forget about her?
Mhm.
How can I forget about the electricity that I giving me power to talk to you right now? So the person that invented electricity. How can I forget about that? How can I forget about everything about in life. It's all about our dead. And they are living into a different dimension, but they are here. We communicate with them. They play a big part in our life, and we do what we're supposed to do so we can live it until we join them. And who knows when we go there, what's gonna happen? Maybe we all here, include myself, we have our little anxiety or fear of dying because we don't know exactly what's gonna happen. But in reality, maybe when we dead, we better off. We in a different dimension. Maybe we're gonna do something better, but we don't know for sure because we in that dimension. And some of us communicate. Like in my community, I can communicate with the dead. You can feel them. Sometimes, I could be sitting here and meditating, talking to my mother, and I can feel her presence. I will dream something's gonna happen. I will have a dream and she will come and talk to me. Someone in my family will come and talk to me. Now, can you tell me that they're not around? They are. They are us and we are them in a different dimension. That's
Mhm.
what that's the reason why we honor them so much. And also the people that I talked to you about it, which is the hot pepper, the bonnet pepper. We didn't have hot pepper, bonnet pepper in Africa. So we didn't have them in Haiti. It come from Mexico. Look how in Mexico they celebrate the Day of the Muerto, the Day of the Dead. Look how they celebrate it. And it is so interesting to see that the Haitians show take the bonnet pepper for the dead. It's because we are one human race. We communicate in a different shade of skin in this planet. And that's what the Gedi tell you. The Gedi come and whine and talk about, do a lot of sexual movement, really curse, and to tell you that, let go of all your nonsense. Let go of it because we are here to do one thing. It's just to make life better for the one that are gonna come after us, just like our ancestor made it better for us today. And that's what Gede is all about. That's how we celebrate our dead. And today I feel like my mother, my father, my grandparents, everyone tomorrow morning, and my mother where she's at, and my family in the real where I come from. I in my altar I serve them, but in Haiti also tomorrow morning they're gonna do the same thing. The whole family is gonna get together. So we do respect and honor our ancestors.
Mhm.
And it's about time for us to understand each other, to know that really in this life we don't have to make the difference among us anymore. It's time to get together. That's what Voodoo is all about. And if you
Thank
have any question, you can ask me because I can keep on talking about this forever.
thank you, Ingrid. We're not going to take questions quite yet, but I did want to say, when we think about memorialization of our ancestors, think about it. Most people that we know, including ourselves, had photos like in your house growing up. There might be a place where all your ancestors were actually placed, photographs and stuff. Those are really altars. Those were ancestral altars. But, we didn't necessarily call it that, but that's what it was. I mean, and whether it was, when you look at the collective memory of people, I mean, like, for example, you can go through a certain amount of households in a certain period of time and you could find a picture of Jesus Christ, a picture of Martin Luther King, you know, um, John F. Kennedy, just these people that had passed on, as well as your own relatives, and it was so common in so many households. But people don't see it as like an ancestral honoring. They don't call it that. And also you mentioned that, what voodoo really is, but it's this Hollywood image that has created all this fear among people. They get afraid, um, uh, with traditional African ancestral, worship and so forth. But really, it's always been there all around us. We just may not have called it these certain names and so forth. And the other thing you mentioned too, which I thought was interesting, you mentioned that if someone died and the family could not afford to have a funeral, the community would come together for that to happen. And in our Gullah Geechee tradition in South Carolina, we had burial societies. And that also is a very universal thing. People, like when my grandmother, we used to go down to her house, and they had a home charity lodge. And this lodge, they met and they would worship all during the week. I was like, wow, she goes to church so much. But they would worship and they would praise and they would give dues. Everybody would give dues. And then if your husband died, or if there was a fire, or if somebody needed to be buried, those funds were used for that. So it was like the precursor to insurance. So this whole idea of what you mentioned, that in Haiti they do that, it's a practice that we've done in many places around the world, in terms of community and taking communities taking care of each other. And sometimes we've gotten away from that, but those are the kind of things that we need to remember that we once used to do. So I'd like to open up a little bit and ask if Lewis or Tara could give us some thoughts or some experiences that they've had around. I'm sorry,
Tara.
I see you. Oh, Tara, you're saying he's pointing down to you, Tara. Tara, if you could give us some of your, I guess, ancestral stories or traditions, or if you like to share any of that with us.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you to Amelia, because it's my first time today. Hearing you is my first time hearing anyone really share with me about what voodoo really means. And when I listened to you, I heard a lot of the teachings that are shared by many of the indigenous people that I've had the honor and privilege to listen to throughout the last, few decades. And so thank you so much for putting that knowledge out into the universe, and sharing it. I feel I feel very much like I received a lot of benefit from listening to you, because um, I know on the map that Haiti is not too far from where we are here in South Florida. And I know that there's a lot of people from Haiti here. And yeah, I really appreciate your sharing, because what it reminded me of is some of the, I spent a few decades here researching so that I could learn more about my own culture and history. And part of that history is the process the process that we call colonization. And so, what I'm understanding from listening to you today is, similar to the process that was undertaken in order um, prevent uh, prevent the relationship building, the historic nation building that was always part of this continent. That was one of the first things that was broken at the time of colonization, at the time 500 years ago, when when people from Europe came and decided to make this part of the world their home. One of the ways that they employed was this system that we know today as divide and conquer. And so part of that was, and this story I've I learned from the Garifuna people, who really make up a large part of my mother's hometown, the Garinago, or Galinago, as they're called in the more southern parts of the Caribbean. That, you know, as the people left St. Vincent and they were looking for a place, you know, to go, to make their home, to make their new home, all along the way, you know, the colonizers would go and say, you know, don't let those people come here. Don't let those people settle here. You know, they're this, they're that, they're bad, they're evil, they're whatever. You know, all these words that invoke fear and, you know, uncertainty and doubt. And so, you know, those seeds of fear and uncertainty and doubt were the seeds that were being planted at that time, you know, by the colonizers. They weren't seeds of, you know, bounty and abundance and friendship and kindness. You know, that's, you know, those are the things that we need to be planted. Those are the things we need to plant now. And so, you know, so when I hear about the struggles that you have of keeping the culture of the Voodoo people, the people who are who are part of that way of life, you know, it also reminds me of the struggle that, you know, that I have as a mom, trying to pass on the little bit of the culture and knowledge, you know, that I've received from my mom and from my grandmother, from my great grandmother. You know, it's hard today to be able to keep those, keep planting those seeds of kindness and, you know, and of respect, in this place that's still very colonized. You know, this place is still very, very full of those, you know, those negative seeds. And so I hope that we can, continue to do this kind of work so that we can learn about each other's stories from each other, not from someone else, you know, but from ourselves, and sharing with each other in this way. Not necessarily through a screen, but, you know, a screen is what works for right now, but hopefully, you know, hopefully the truth of ourselves can transcend this kind of digital technology, so that we can see and feel and hear each other and learn about each other for who we are, and strengthen each other that way. Because above everything, you know, like we're remembering our ancestors, but at the very same time, in doing that, what we're doing is we're trying to remember our children of the future who haven't been born yet. And in order for them to come, we need to make this place better than it is right now. We need to return this place, you know, the physicality of it, to the way in which we found it. You know, we need our water to be clean. We need ourselves to be peaceful. We need to have happiness and beauty in our life. And so, you know, it's really basic what we're trying to do here. And so I hear some of those similarities, and it makes me really happy, because I feel like, I feel very much less alone in the work that I've chosen to do, you know, as a human being, as a mom, as someone who tries her best to do whatever she can to also help her community.
Thank you, Tara. Louis,
Thank you.
would you like to say anything about some
Well,
of
there's
those?
a couple of things that came up. Tara and I used to work at a school called Multicultural Indigenous Academy.
Hold on,
And
Louis. Can we get Louis back on the screen? Who's running
Yeah,
the thingy?
yes.
There. Thank you.
I'm working on it. I'm doing my tech, my
I
tech
know it's
stuff
hard to
here.
multitask. It's hard to multitask. I just wanted to be able to see Louis when he was talking.
Okay, no, I understand. Thank
could you
you.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Multicultural Indigenous Academy. And the students it was mostly students of color, Latino, African American, Native American, and then a smaller number of Asian and/or European American students. And each morning we would start the day with cultural circles that were led by adults and or elders. And each month, the students are responsible for teaching other students about their cultures. But I distinctly remember that when we did Day of the Dead, we had the students make offerendas. And one of the things that really touched me was one, the number of deaths that our students had experienced of their classmates, neighbors. They were really familiar with death. And so it was very powerful to hear them take turns telling stories about friends or family members that they wanted to honor and remember. And I distinctly remember times when these gangbangers would cry in front of everybody, telling their stories. So remembering those recently gone who are now ancestors really gave them the space to speak from their hearts, to be more, to take off a mask and be more human. Um, that was a powerful thing about being there. The other thing that I wanted to say is that since 2013, I've gone to Africa every year, most of the time to Ethiopia, but I've also spent time in Sierra Leone on working on a project there. And one of the things I noticed about people was that they could be Christians, they could be Muslims, but everybody seemed to have some relationship with their indigenous traditional spirituality. And they didn't think about it as a religion, they would just say that's who we are. And a lot of times it was how they related to the natural world too. So I don't know. It's just been amazing to have these experiences in different parts of the US and different parts of the world and see how the oldest, most traditional parts or dynamics of people's lives are connected to nature and are connected to their ancestors.
Louis, thank you so much for talking about the young people because it brings us more in touch with how we can relate with our youth today around this whole theme. Um, I too think that it's really a support tool to be able to do this work because it does, as you said, give them a way to release some of those feelings that they've had around these losses that are so close to their lives. So thank you for sharing that. Is anybody else doing any work with youth specifically around what we're talking about today?
Well, the other thing that comes up, I'm sorry if I'm speaking too much,
No,
but
no, you're not at all. Go ahead,
uh,
Louis. This is about conversation. We're fine.
the young people that I interact with regularly, because of the things that are happening in the world now, it's easy for them to get stuck in a place of despair. And one of the things that I'm able to tell them at times that helps them make sense of it all is that our ancestors dealt with difficult, impossible circumstances that could have gotten them stuck in despair. But rather than giving up, I think they had some sense of we were going to come. We were going to come along, and they could not afford not to keep going, not to keep building, not to keep loving, because they had to pass that on to those yet to come. And if
Mm,
they could dream about us, think about us, and do the right thing in this present moment, it kind of ensured that we would be here a generation and another generation and another generation.
mm, mm. Thank you. One of the projects that I did back in Charleston, and this was we did a cemetery investigative project. It was called the Gullah Book of the Dead, and we had 7 young people, and we gave them all cameras, and we went to 4 cemeteries, historical cemeteries, African American cemeteries in Charleston. And we just gave them the cameras, and they were told to photograph whatever they wanted to, and they did. And then once we did the photographs, we went to the Charleston County Public Library, to the Archives and History Room, and we looked up some of those people that we found. So we found, for example, soldiers that had been in the first United States Colored Troops military out of Charleston. We found veteran records, burial records. We also went to the local mortician's place, and we found out that military used bronze headstones, and they saw how images were sandblasted onto headstones, and it was just a variety of things. And then we had an exhibit of the photographs that they took, and we did it both in person and we did a virtual exhibit as well for people that couldn't get to the gallery. So that was, this was years ago, prior to all this Zoom and virtual stuff that we have doing of late. And one of the great things was that some of our young people had never been in a cemetery. They had issues and around fear about going in cemeteries. But after that, they felt pretty comfortable. And they also felt like they had a better grip of the technology involved because we did a website. I'm getting feedback again. And excuse me. And, so it really opened up another experience for them on a number of multimedia platforms. So that was one of the things we did. And that was a small grant fund that we got from a local creative placemaking organization in Charleston. So, I think there's so many ways that, we can look at this work and trying to make it palatable and interesting and sparking creativity in our young people. So thank you for sharing that story, Lewis. The other thing I thought about, and I noticed we're kind of going back into what we've done in the past and what we're planning for the future. And I started thinking about some of the traditions in my own family around, what do you do when people pass away, if you will. And so the things, for example, I remember my mother saying that when her father passed away, um, that was back then, that was when they actually kept the body in the house for a few days. So they would cover mirrors. That was an important thing. You had to cover mirrors. I see some hands raised, so y'all remember that, right? There were things like at the funeral, the children were passed over the grave. The children were literally handed across the grave, and that was to appease the spirit of the deceased one, so that they could rest peacefully and not come back, to come back for their children and so forth. And it's very interesting because those traditions, depending on who's looking at them, people have different response to it. I was at an event where that happened, and one woman tried to accuse the other woman of witchcraft, and an argument broke out. So it's like very interesting to see how people respond to tradition um, when sometimes they have no idea of what it even means. They just have these images of what they think it may mean. So I was wondering if there are any other things that people want to share, like in some of those traditional things, like grave decoration, for example, or, you know, I'm going to open it up again to the floor for discussion. Anybody like to chime in?
Let me add, there's the similarity there is between the Haitian and African descent here in in USA, in America.
Okay.
We have the cross, which is the cross road, the same length in all four corners that represent the
Hmm.
circle of life. We have that. But here in America and the African descent, they have the same thing, except they were not able to keep it that way. So what they did, if certain pictures that I look at, they use the wheel that they used to have, and they put it
Right.
in front of their door. So the master would not understand it represent the cross of the ancestors and the crossroad, what they believed in, what they used the everyday life. And
Mm-hmm.
those similarity is the same thing that we have in Haiti. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the 10 life there is between life and death. And then you have the cross like this.
Right.
And the bottom, if I can, I don't have anything to show you. If I can, so they use the wheel because they cannot have the cross because they would be
Right.
punished. So they use the wheel. You have the crossroad right here. So
Right.
life is here, and life began, and you're in your quarter of your life when you're a young person. And when you get on top of it, you are on the top of your life. And now at 50 years old, you started to descend to go
Right.
around. So this is the journey of life until you get here. So the African descent here, they cannot use it. And at each of them, you find um, a circle that make the point of different colors and different stage that you're going through your life. And it also in the middle, you have the circle that represent the sun. And then without the sun, which is the fire element, we're not gonna be here. And without water, we wouldn't be here. Air and earth, it's the same thing.
Right.
So when you go around, you come from earth, from the sexual art and act, and you're just gonna go around and meet all the elements, and you until you go back to Mother Earth. And I find the same thing with African descent because now they use the will. You're not gonna understand. The master will not understand why they use the will. And some places, what they do, they take the top of the wheel, they cut it, and they leave the bottom, meaning they put it in the cemetery, meaning the person doesn't have to go through the circle. They already reached the top, the circle, that the top from here. So now they belong with the ancestor, and they go back to water because we came
Mm-hmm.
from water from our mother's womb, and then
Right.
when we go back, when we die, we're gonna go into water because our body is mostly water, and this is how we're gonna go to Mother Earth. And it is interesting to see that we are the similarities that we have in different places in the world. And at the end of the day, I tell everyone we are one human race. That's who
Mm-hmm.
we are.
Ingrid, as you mentioned that, it brings to my mind Robert Farris Thompson's work, Four Moments of the Sun. And he talks about the Bakongo, the Four Moments of the Sun. And it too is a wheel with, the before life, life, afterlife, and death. And it's a very similar concept that, and you made me think of that just as you were
Yes, it
sharing
is.
the visual image. Yes.
It is the cross of Congo that I just presented to you. That's the cross of Congo, and
Uh-huh.
the
Hmm.
similarity in different human in different parts of the world are almost the same thing.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
really get into it, it's almost the same thing. And isn't it gonna be beautiful when we realize that we are one human race,
absolutely.
and we don't have to fight. We don't have. We can understand and accept each other, and maybe that's why our job is all about. That's the reason why we're here today. That's why we're talking about it.
True, true. Lewis,
I'm
we
wondering
got
if Tara could say something about the medicine wheel, because as she was describing that, it made me think about the medicine wheel.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Tara. Tara's getting a little dark there.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could turn my screen around so you could see how beautiful the
Oh,
sunset
yes.
is.
Oh yeah, it's sunset.
But but what that means is that I don't have any more
Light.
natural spotlight anymore. But anyways,
Okay.
um, I thought about that too. The the description and that symbol on this continent. I've seen it at several sacred sites where, you know, what in Ojibwe is referred to as the Gete Anishinaabe, you know, basically like the grandparents before the grandparents, the really elders, the ancestors, in other words, where they you know, left those marks for us in the most lasting technology that they could create at the time. So often we'll see them in stone or you know, or marks made out of a kind of paint, you know, a natural pigment that was fixed to rocks. Or in the case of, you know, in where my mom's from in Belize, or in many places in Mesoamerica, often that will also be, you know, in pottery. But you can see that symbol that Amelia just described throughout the continent. And, you know, and more recently, we've come to know, you know, to label that symbol the medicine wheel, but it's also known as, you know, as a crossroads or as a teaching tool with many different layers. You know, there's many different cultural teachings that can be shared with that same symbol, including, you know, the cardinal directions, for example, you know, north, south, east, west, or east, west, north, south, or you know, whichever way your part of the world moves to, you know, and you know, some people go clockwise, some people go counterclockwise, but you can also use that symbol to teach about the stages of life, like how Amelia talked about just now. Or you could also use it to talk about the geography of the continent, the responsibilities of each area of our continent. So, you know, sometimes it's said that the knowledge that's held, for us is limitless. You know, but we only have to ask, and you know, we also have to be responsible for the answers that we seek. And so, yeah. So the even you know, that symbol, sometimes you can see it in what's called petroforms. Like here right now, I'm sitting along the banks of the river, and there's all these beautiful, I think it's too dark for you to see them, but there's all these beautiful rocks that I'm sitting on here. And so, you know, when we speak of that symbol, I'm reminded of the incredible medicine wheel petroforms that you can see at places like Bear Butte, or at the very, very, very top of the Rocky Mountains, the Continental Divide. It's so high up, but you know, but there are those who created those symbols in, you know, on the earth in large scale, as a way to mark time, and also, you know, as a way to ensure the continuity of the culture and the teachings, and you know, so that the young ones will know that we're here and we've been here for a really long time. And, you know, that it is up to us to carry this knowledge into the future, you know, regardless of what our feelings might be about, you know, about teaching, and, you know, what each area's, you know, each area has their own way of ensuring that cultural continuity. You know, here in South Florida, you know, we live in Broward. You know, we live among the Seminoles. I'm gonna have to move in a minute because I'm getting showered on. It's just a little mist, I'll say, but it starts to pour. I'm gonna make for the lights over there. But yeah, so the Seminole culture that I've learned here is to really, you know, how you can be respectful is to not talk about the culture. And that's, you know, that's their way to, you know, still keep everything hidden. and allow the elders to choose their let them make their own decisions about who they're going to pass knowledge on to. And in many places it is that way. And so we give respect to, that is part of respect, is respecting each area's cultural protocols for how knowledge will be transmitted from one person to another and from one generation to another.
That's an interesting point you bring up, Tara, about, the close or openness, culturally. And it's kind of good to know that, because in trying to approach and do work, if you don't know that, then, you could be banging your head up against a wall, so thank you for sharing that. We're coming up to our last about 10 minutes or so, and I wanted to ask if anybody wanted to share any last thoughts or questions. I think, Ingrid, you had a question earlier. I don't know if you remember it, but I hope you do. But if anybody wants to share or ask anything, this will be a good time to do it. And any of our audience members that are listening, if you could post a question, that would be well appreciated, and we will try our best to address it. And also, if anybody wants to have any parting words or share how you might be able to be contacted and those sorts of things, this would be a great time to do that as well. So, anyone?
Well, I definitely want to, even though you guys can probably only see my glasses at this point, but I didn't want to leave the water, because the water's right here and it's so beautiful. So I just wanted to stay here, even though it's super dark. But I definitely wanted to invite everyone to come back down here to this beautiful location along the river. We are going to be celebrating the closing of the Community Ofrendas exhibition here at History Fort Lauderdale tomorrow. Tomorrow is the only day of the year that History Fort Lauderdale is open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Usually it's 10 to 4, but tomorrow we will stay open until 8 in order to give everyone a chance to be able to come and see the ofrendas before they're closed. There's over 50 artists that are participating of all different age groups. There are some children's exhibition, young people, old people, elders, ancestors. There's lots of different forms of art inside the museum right now, and we will be closing the exhibition along with the Florida Day of the Dead celebration, which is a community-wide festival in order to honor the day. And it is definitely a American fusion version of Dia de los Muertos. But, we will definitely have some cultural elements as well as many multicultural elements to the exhibition, including a work by Dr. LaRoche, and sharing with us about some of her ancestors, some of her Gullah-Geechee ancestors. Now the party boat is here. I thought I was going to have to mute my mic, but he's going the other way. So yeah, thank you again for this beautiful opportunity to just, share with some very special and knowledgeable people. And again, thank you, Amelia, for the teaching about the cross, because this year I'm 49, so I got to get ready for what that fourth stage is going to be like.
Nice. Thank you, Tara, so much for joining us. Words from our other guests.
I just wanted to invite everyone, as I live here now, I'm going to go celebrate in Little Haiti Cultural Center. If anybody you have a chance, I know it's a last minute thing, just come on by, and you will have an amazing time. This is what I'm going to do right after this. I'm going to head there right now to celebrate my ancestors.
Oh, nice. The last time I was there, I had a wonderful time. So thank you for sharing that, Ingrid, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad that I reached out to my coworker and asked the question, can you connect me with someone? And now I have a beautiful new friend from the community. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
And Louis?
I'd like to leave you with a poem.
Okay.
It's called One, No Matter What. If you looked into my grandparents' faces, where all the times and trials had come to rest, into their eyes, you would see that all the world merges into one dream, one linking unity, like the earth, the sun, the righteous rain, one sacred fluidity, one perfect complex simplicity, one exquisite eternal moment unbelievably, one gorgeous movement of coming and going, moving slowly, slowly on this wheel of time, caked with a muddy love, carrying our one soul to a new birth, a new earth. Thank you. It
Louis,
was
thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you so much, Louis. That was beautiful. Thank you. So again, I would really like to extend my gratitude to my guests. And again, they were Tara Chadwick, Amelia Ingrid Lera, and Louis Al- Alamayu. Alamayu. Is that right? Alamayu. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. And I want to share with you, we have a new exhibit opening this week, Thursday evening, and I am actually going to show you right now the details on that so you can kind of get a sense of it. It is called The Color of Money, and the featured artist, John Jones, comes from Charleston, South Carolina. And what he does is he actually takes original images from Confederate money that our ancestors worked in fields, etc., and he paints those. He blows them up and paints them. The work is exquisite. So I invite you to come and join us. Our opening is 6:30 Thursday evening, and it will be up for until January 8th. But we'd like you to come sooner rather than later, so you can come, be excited, and invite more guests to join us. So, on behalf of the African American Research Library and Cultural Center, I'd like to thank you for coming. I also want to give thanks to my programming manager, Miss Erin Daniels, and her team. Without them, I'd have a hard time doing all of this stuff. So, thank you so much, Erin. And once again, thank you, guests. And um, everybody knows how to reach me at the library. So I welcome you to come anytime. And if you want to do some research, we have an amazing special collections and archives here as well. Thank you so much. And please have a pleasant evening and be safe in your travels and enjoy your cultural experiences. Peace and blessings. Good
Good
night.
night. Good night.
Good night. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye, Louis. Thank you so much. Good night.